So it says the webinar is now broadcasting to all attendees, and I gather that it might take, I don't know, a couple of seconds or so for people to start filtering in. You join me in our spare room, and this is where I've been working from home. And I think I've said meaningless things for long enough for most people to have typed in passwords and done whatever they need to do. So it is 5 o'clock and it's time for the joy of spines. And some people, I don't know, I've no idea who's logged in for this. Some people might have seen this before, and that's because I've been performing it since 2015. I should say, before we get started, before we all settle down, the usual housekeeping rules. The toilets are wherever your builders put them in your house, and there is no fire drill planned. So if your fire alarm goes off, don't hang about for the Zoom thing to finish. Get out of your house by whatever means you would normally do, because this is being recorded. So you'll be able to see the joy of spines anytime at your convenience. So obey your own fire drill and don't hang about. So the joy of spines, it was something I first performed in 2015, I think it was, for something called Museums Show Off. And that was an event where you were invited to kind of, if you worked in a museum, library, gallery, you could go along and have 5 minutes to talk about a collection item that you really liked, that you thought the world should know more about. And my collection item was 14 million things from the 20th and 21st centuries, because that's what I'm responsible for the place I work, which is the National Library of Scotland. And what I wanted to do really was explain a conceptual treasure, something which I think is profoundly important and moving. So I did, and it went well, and people said, oh, you could do a bigger show. And so I did a bigger show. And since then I've performed it around Scotland and went to London once with it, and literary festivals and these kind of things. And now I'm beaming into your homes, and that's very nice. So I'll probably speak quite quickly. I'm sorry about that. You were promised 360 photographs of book spines. I've whittled it down to 260. So please don't write in and complain. It's so that we can try and finish by past. I normally take about 45 minutes to do this, so I've abridged it already. So this is what we're talking about, the joy of spines. I've frozen. Why is that? Righty-ho, excellent. Hashtag joy of spines if you want to look at things online or tweet about it. That's the library's Twitter account. And we are talking about book spines, but before we start talking about book spines, I always reference this fabulous charity. We take our backs for granted, and it's incredible to think that a spinal injury could completely change your life in an instant. And there is this fabulous charity and others like them who talk about and provide resources for and support for people with spinal injuries. It's a slightly tangential thing, but we are all working from home, many of us at least are, and probably not sitting properly. So take care of your spine, because it makes pretty much everything else possible. But this is actually the kind of spine that we're talking about. This is the joy of spines that you've come to hear about. And you probably imagine that as I'm going about my business and passing down the libraries, some of the libraries, 120 miles of shelves that we have, that the kind of book spines that I really like are these kind of old vellum-y book spines, which are cold to the touch, or these strong and stable wavy pattern when you put them all together. But funnily enough, the kind of spines, your internet connection is unstable. I just got a message saying my internet connection is unstable. Funnily enough, the kind of books that I like are these books that tell you exactly the kind of thing which is going on within them. So you don't even have to open these books to realize that they are about concrete in hot environments. And the library has got lots of books like that, where it tells you exactly what's going on the spine. We've of course got, therefore, books about things made in concrete, with concrete, such as pavements. We've got books about crowns, of course, because this is Scotland. So, you know, James I or VI of Scotland, only this is a book about dental crowns rather than monarchical crowns. There's a book here called The Polymer Handbook that's purely from its spine alone. You can tell three things about this book. The first is it's only about polymers. It's not about anything else, just polymers. The second thing is it's the 4th edition. So there's so much happening in polymer world that we've had to have 4 editions. I'm just going to check my mobile to see that somebody hasn't texted me to say my internet connection has died. So I'm presuming I'm still broadcasting.
Your internet connection's fine, Graeme.
Internet connection's fine, yay. Please light candles for it if you're at home. And the third thing you need to know about the Polymer Handbook is it's not a handbook. You couldn't put it in your pocket. It's really heavy, it's really chunky. If you dropped it on your foot, it would hurt. It's a massive book, and it's only about polymers. So what our collections look like when they arrive into the building, they just come in on trolleys. When everything was print that we were receiving about 5,000 new items a week. It's an absolutely mind-boggling amount of collection material to receive. And it looks like this, and you've got something, a book about Vietnam Zippos, which is a tremendously moving book about the cigarette lighters that were sent to soldiers in the Vietnam War, and the various engravings on them from their loved ones. And it sits next to Spot Says Goodnight on the trolley. So what the hell is that even? What kind of an introduction is that to make to any sort of presentation? It's just a ramble. So I'm going to try and unpick this all now and make it make sense. So this is me at work. And that's where I would normally be, standing in between these shelves with lots of books on either side of me. I mean, I personally feel that all, there's a question coming, I'm going to ignore it. I feel that all PowerPoint presentations should have an abstract, and the abstract for this is that if you've ever been interested in anything ever, then come to the library. That's at least when we're back open. I don't know exactly when we'll be open again, but hopefully by the autumn, we'd like to be inviting people back in and carrying on as we were. And I can say that we've got anything, and you should come here if you're interested in anything, because we've got this book. I'm 5'7", and I'm obviously not a basketball player. And I had a quick flick through this book, and it looked pretty complete to me. What we're describing in this presentation is everything. That was my conceptual treasure at the museum's show off. I wanted to present everything, and it's a very difficult job to have. You would think it would be easy to say to people that we've got everything. Well, apart from anything else, it would be a lie anyway, because we don't have everything. If the National Library of Scotland had everything, there wouldn't be any other libraries. What we have is the possibility of everything. The collections are so broad and so deep that there is almost no chance that there isn't a topic that hasn't been covered. That's what I'm trying to say. So the scope of what there is in the library is everything. Some people think that we only have Scottish books for Scottish people about Scottish things, and we really don't. We collect UK and Irish published output, which covers everything. So therefore, if you're interested in something, something is a subset of the possibility of everything, and therefore, if you'd have to have never had a sentient thought in order to not get something out of the library's collections. But the problem we have is that when we say, that we've got everything, people imagine that the thing that they're interested in is too niche, and we don't have it, but they'd be wrong. And this is why they'd be wrong. They'd be wrong because the library has got so much about termites that we've even got abstracts about termites, finding aids to help you find all of the information that there is about termites that's being produced every year. It's obscene. Non-wovens abstracts. So presumably man-made fibers, things which aren't woven, abstracts. And what an abstract is, if you're unfamiliar, is something like this. So page after page after page, where it tells you that miracle fibers are clearly booming. And it's sort of telling you, where can you read this article? And it's in Textual Horizons or whatever, volume 9, number 11, blah, blah. The thing we're talking about here, and you might have strayed into this without realizing, we're talking about library science. And you all need to understand that you are the same species as people that do this, people who index newspapers. So this has now been digitized at times. It's a fabulous resource and the library subscribes to it and it's great. But before people could search it digitally, you could use these bonkers finding aids and index to the times. So you can see at the time when the Wall Street crash was happening in 1929, you know, WASP's correspondence, October the 1st, page 12, column E, somebody wrote a letter about wasps. And you can follow the waspness, you know, 2nd of October, page 10, column E, and so on. It's incredible. It's not normal behavior. And you are the same species as people that do that. So this is a short story about, it's a look behind the scenes of a legal deposit library. Don't worry, I'll explain in a minute, about basically why I've got the best job in Scotland. So here's me reminding myself to tell you what the National Library of Scotland is. There are 6 of these in the UK and Ireland, and they are legal deposit libraries. The others are the British Library, the National Library of Wales, Oxford, the Bodleian Library in Oxford, Cambridge University Library, and Trinity College Dublin. These are our brothers and sisters, and we all have this right to request, to claim a copy of everything that's published in the UK and Ireland, and therefore we typically do. And it results in an absolutely gigantic intake of publications. And publishing is a particular UK and Irish strength. It's an industry that does very, very well indeed. So that's why we have all of this. We get it, every publication in the UK and Ireland, because of a piece of legislation. And we're very grateful to the publishers who engage with us so well on this. And our collections would be nothing without the engagement and the cooperation of these publishers. So that's what this is. It's about the business of publishing, which is basically when you take some ink and you mix it with some alphabets and you then put it into type, and there's an awful lot of fonts and different types. In fact, we've got books about type, and we keep it then forever on paper. And paper is fairly resilient. We've got paper that's going back centuries and centuries, and increasingly, of course, we're keeping it now digitally as well, because a lot of what we receive now we only get in the electronic format. But it's still the business of publishing, and then we keep them forever. And that's what makes us different as legal deposit libraries, is that we keep the content forever. We're not churning content. The fabulous public library systems, school libraries, university libraries, these wonderful cousins in the library world have to manage their collections because their space is smaller and they have to reflect what audiences really need at that particular time. The role of a legal deposit library is to basically archive the published output for all time, full stop, because we're collecting for tomorrow, because we really don't know what people might actually want to research in 300 years' time. So we just take it and we save it. And that means that the National Library of Scotland is Scotland's largest children's book library. And we don't market ourselves as that. We're Scotland's largest car repair manual library, like by a long way. We really are Scotland's largest car repair manual library. We're Scotland's largest collection of whatever even these books are. You know, in the event of a great big sort of wipeout of technology, you could, if you wanted to, rebuild it all back, because we've been receiving since, you know, the 1960s, these kind of software engineering books. Scotland's largest newspaper library, for example, which of course, if we're Scotland's largest that, then we're Scotland's largest collection of adverts. And we don't do this. We just say we're the National Library of Scotland, and we hope people will disaggregate the what that means. break it apart. But in actual fact, we need to do a lot more of this explaining, because people just don't have the vision for it. They can't conceive what everything might be. But what everything includes is, for example, this advert from the Glasgow Herald in 1938 for biscuits. And the National Library of Scotland actually owes its life to biscuits. We were founded on biscuit money by Sir Alexander Grant, and who was the approver of the recipe for the digestive biscuit. Anyway, blah. Here is a man in an advert, Scottish man wearing Scottish traditional dress, sword passive in 1938, celebrating the biscuit. And then here from our ephemera collection is from 1983, Scottish man, Scottish traditional food, sword aggressive. What could be happening in 1983 that could make this Scottish man so annoyed? The crisper the clans. And what else is going on here? Is there some sort of, you know, a crisps and aggressive food stuff, biscuits genteel? I don't care. What I care about is that we've got the resources for somebody else to do the PhD in Scottish nationalism as referenced in confection and adverts. That's all I care about. Take a little bit of time out to tell you about how much I love magazines. So Scotland's largest collection of magazines as well. You know, I could do this all day. And the thing you need to know about magazines is how much choice there is. There are so many options that you can look at, and that is why magazines light my fire, because they penetrate the audience like nothing else does. The person who might read Woman's Own or Woman's Weekly or Woman, it's not accidental that there are so many titles. It's all about audience segmentation. It's about class, it's about aspiration, it's about hobbies, backgrounds, all sorts of things. And there's a magazine for every possible person and their hobbies and interests. We at any one time we're receiving about 20,000 periodicals, titles, magazines, journals, that kind of thing. It's a massive intake. My Guy, you know, that's where the teenage life was documented for many, many years. The Mobile Home and Holiday Caravan is read by a different group of people to Motor Caravan, Motorhome Monthly. I don't know. Would you get both magazines? Is there a demographic at work here? Practical Caravan as opposed to what other type of caravan? Jogging only ran for a couple of editions, and yet running is still running. We get all of this stuff. Kerrang, Angling Times. Retail newsagent fascinates me because I think to myself, would you see that in a newsagent? Who is the market for retail newsagent other than newsagents? So you're never going to see it in a newsagent. You know, it's weird. It's kind of like it feels like a fault line in our collection, some sort of matrix glitch, the retail newsagent magazine. But Scotland's largest collection of this, a survey of injuries of Scottish National League male volleyball players, research report number 17. I don't even know if there's been 16 other research reports about male volleyball players, or if this is just about injury. I have no idea. It's an official publication. About a fifth of the library's collections are official publications, government reports, grey literature, all of these things that we get all the time. We've got 850 books on quilting, which we didn't even know until somebody said, have you got any books on quilting? And we discovered we've got 850 books on the fabulousness of quilting. So the summary so far, with not very long to go, and I'm only at the beginning, is that we've got a right awful lot of books, a very lot of books, and if you put them all together, there is a mass effect, and you can call this distant reading. If you wanted to do, you could look at not a particular book or even a collection of books. You could do some things around digital scholarship, and you could render these things into a digital soup and look at trends and things that you could only see through computational analysis. It is a data set, a massive corpus of words. That's what it is. Something I should have said at the start, we get people that write in to apply for jobs and they say, I'd love to work at the library because I like reading. That's not what we do. And I also know about the Dewey Decimal System, which is of no use at all. We don't use it. We don't have any classification scheme that would make any sense to anybody else. It might surprise you to learn that we store everything by size, or the vast majority of things, because when you're receiving 5,000 new items a week, the height of them is really important. This is a nightmare for us. That's the last thing we would want to have, because look at all of that wasted space either side of that big book. So we don't do it like that. And another thing we have a bee in our bonnet about is duplicates. So a new edition of a book is a bona fide thing that we would take a new edition of a book with the same title, but we wouldn't take 2 copies of the same edition of a book. So we try to keep duplication to a minimum, and if we do that, there should be room to swing a cat. But eventually, like most libraries, we might have to read this book, but that's still a way off yet. So how does any of the, how do people find things? That's, everybody says, well, if you don't, how do you find things? All you need is a catalogue record with a unique identifier, and then the person, the reader, the researcher, they put the sense into the collections. And so here's somebody, they've selected a whole load of stuff about theatre. As far as they are aware or concerned, these have all come from the theatre shelf, which doesn't exist. They have created it. And these books could have come from miles away from each other, but they arrive in the reading room as if they've come from a theatre collection, or the museum collection, or the tourism section, but it doesn't exist. If you were worried, if there's too much, Graeme, there's too much to read, then we've got a book. What shall I read? Or even a book about books, or something that tell you about what the different genders might want to read. So if you're struggling, then we've got a book even that tells you how picture books work. So please don't be afraid, don't struggle, speak to us and we can help. Frozen in time, yes, because that's what happens with our collections. Is something fascinating. It really is the most incredible thing. It's almost like the library is a wine cellar, or a sort of a whiskey distillery shed. We take the stuff, we put it on the shelves, we keep it atmospherically controlled, and we do nothing to it. And 40 years later, it has changed because the context around the item changed. So my guy becomes a social science text about the development of children in the 80s. So coin op, laundrette and unit cleaner might not leap out from the shelf as sort of a, if you were doing something about casual sexism in the 70s, you might not think to look at that, only there it is. There is the casual sexism of the 1970s, and it's ferreted away in a random publication. And I think that that's not necessarily our role to leverage that knowledge out. That's the role of research. That's what research is about. But can we do anything with our cataloguing? Can we make this more visible? It's a conundrum because it's extremely resource intensive unless you could digitize it, and even then it would be problematic. So before I forget, I just started talking. I didn't even actually say who the hell I was. I'm Graeme Hawley, and I work at the library. I'm head of general collections, and the quick background to my life is I fancied, I wanted to travel, so I married a German person, and it was an absolute nightmare. So well, basically just a lack of charisma on both parts, and we don't even speak anymore. So I thought, well, in future I'll just settle for some chips from a German workshop, and it left me thinking, to be honest, that I could have done a lot better. So I thought, well, I could really fancy zhuzhing up my life, and I thought, well, how about Alaska? I'd never been there before, so I took off, and it didn't go well either. It was a nightmare. So eventually I thought, stop, enough of the travel, and where can you find real happiness? So I read this book, and and then I started drinking, and ever since I read this book, I've been brushing my teeth with wine, which isn't book title. I mean, some people have said to me after this, do you make these titles up? No, they really are bonkers book titles. So that was me having a wee bit of fun by stringing together some book titles to make a silly sequence. But sometimes there are books that sit together on the shelves which present their own mirth. And here is, for example, The Politics of Hysteria next to Dust is Dangerous. The Power of Positive Thinking next to Why Men Fail. Sport Parachuting next to Death and Dying. Harps in the Wind, You'll End Up Dead. Horrors, Fun for Elizabeth. Cats and Dogs, They Rode into Europe, in the words of Adam Smith, Tony Blair, and Under the Big Top, The Advocate's Wig. So there they all are, just sitting waiting for somebody like me to take a photograph. I said we don't classify things, that it all just goes onto the shelf in some sort of size thing, but we are built on the collections of the Faculty of Advocates, who prior to 1925 were Scotland's legal deposit library. And when we inherited the collections in 1925 as the National Library of Scotland, they had actually done some subject grouping. So you do get clusters of like material, and you'll find lots of books on something like India Calling, Road to India. They're all next to each other. The Gates of India, Indian Diary, Happy India, Unhappy India, India's Past, India Today, Modern India, Living India, Mother India, Father India, Princes of India, Indian Police, India a Bird's Eye View, and actually it feels a bit like an Indian peep show. And as often as not, it's actually this guy's India. It's a particular type of person's view of India, and rarely is it ever this guy's India. And I think really the clue to history and a bias that we must acknowledge in our collections is who has written this. And the collections of most libraries like this are Eurocentric, and reveal things that certainly in the 21st century you look back on with a degree of awareness that it is a particular view of civilization and of culture. And there are some things for this country which I feel are very, they leap out on the shelves. If there is a shelf that doesn't have a book about the Second World War on it, I feel like it's just a mistake. It's clearly, as you look at the library's shelves, a massive psychological thing for this country. Hitler's war, Hitler's U-boat war, Hitler rearms, 6 years of Hitler, published in 1939. So this is Jewish people already having had 6 years of Hitler by the time the Second World War even began. And so when you see a book title like that, you think, well, it's presumably a rhetorical question. Only it's not really, because if you're prepared to do unspeakable things to people and debase human existence, then you might discover things that are beneficial. And I might one day benefit from obscene experiments that were done that revealed cures for cancer during the Third Reich. And you think, well, I'd never want to benefit on the back of somebody else's suffering. Only, like, I literally do every day. I quite like chicken, and I had it for lunch today, and sometimes I bother to find out if it was ethically sourced, and sometimes it's just convenient. And then it makes me think, well, what the hell kind of monster does that make me? And then I think, God, I only came to work today to look at some books. I didn't want to go on some sort of existentialist downer. And you think, please, can we just look at some books which make me feel cheerful after all of that? My God, can we look at soap making, for pity's sake, or the romance of the postage stamp? And we really need to look at the splendidness of postage stamps, and cricket, for good, lovely cricket, modern water skiing, as opposed to what other what other type of water skiing? Isn't all, I don't know about you, but personally, water skiing just feels modern to me. I can't, I'm struggling to even imagine what ancient water skiing might look like. But anyway, modern water skiing, it's cheerful. New numbers. New guys, don't be worried. If you're running out of numbers, don't, because we've got a book of new numbers. And this is presumably about the new number 12. Real dogs, actual dogs that exist, not made up dogs, real dogs. Practical tortoise racing sounds so cheerful. And dining on turtles, what a nightmare. So there are books which they reach out. When you see the title, it arrests you, and it stops you. Think, oh my gosh, look at the time. Why be tired, Graeme? Why not grow young? Or the far more wonderful objective, grow old along with me. What a lovely thing. What a lovely thing to do. It's coming up for my 22nd anniversary on Monday. Grow old along with me. What a fabulous thing. What am I? Can we save civilization? Is innocence enough? And why can't the English sneeze on a Monday? What are the reasons for France? And when you see a book like this, 10,000 answers to your children's questions, you just know that there's going to be another edition of this book. The only thing that 739 paint questions did was to prompt 1,000 more paint questions because of this, because we never stop asking why. And one of the things we don't really stop asking about is the differences, the things which tell us apart. And the main difference, it's, you know, people are obsessed with is the difference between men and women. And this area has got very much more fraught in recent years. There's a lot of energy in this debate, and you know, you've got second wave feminists, third wave feminists, no wave, blow wave. You've got men going their own way, men's rights activists, brocialists, anarchists. You'd have to be crazy to offer an opinion in this area. Well, pardon me for mansplaining, but I've worked out, I know what the difference is between men and women, and it's very exciting to be able to tell you that it's one. The difference is one. So that's been useful, if nothing else has. It's 1:30. Sorry. For men, it's about the art of keeping fit. It's about avoiding going to seed for men. That's what it's about. It's about keeping fit, men. It's about baldness. For men, it's about baldness. And for women, it's about talking about lace work and needlework and whether they should be put to death. And you know, that's sort of like these aren't bygone punishments, these differences and these gender splits. There are lots of ways that people can be punished. And you know, it's nice to see the collections in the library reflecting progress. There is a sense of progress being made, and here's a book from the 70s, Women in Top Jobs, and into the noughties with Practicing Feminism, History of European Women's Work. But it's only now, I think, in the last 10 years that there feels to be what is referred to as a intersectional appreciation that there are lots of differences that work with each other and play against each other. And I don't know if sometimes the collections are leading the debate or if they're simply just reflecting it. It's an interesting thing. But one thing that I was aware of when putting this presentation together, and I spoke to a lovely poet called Taona, was about how it is Eurocentric. Our collections are Eurocentric, and he said that African collections wouldn't be the same. There is an oral tradition that would not match the printed tradition in European culture. But all the same, the African experience in the library's collections tends to be seen through colonial eyes. And decolonization of collections is something that libraries need to look at, and we do, because it's important to be aware of the bias. And those literary lapses aren't something that we can do about historically. We're not in the business of changing editing our collections. The texts are the texts. But what we can do going forwards is to make sure that when we look at this content, we understand the fuller picture that is missing from the publications, and we can also make sure that we're collecting in a new way. And that's why web archiving is really important. So since 2013, we've been archiving into the UK web. And because of that, it means that we're archiving a very much more demographic type of publication. Most people should find that they can have access to the internet and to blog and post things. And so our collections, these are the library's websites from the last few years. We're doing a tremendous amount of web archiving. And it means that the diversity of voice is starting to be really felt in our collections, particularly the online stuff, because so many people have access to the power of portable publishing devices like this. We've been, in the last 2 months, we've archived close to now, coming up for about 3,000 websites that document the COVID-19 experience in Scotland. So that's what we're doing with web archiving. The disappointing and unglamorous reality of our collections is that they actually don't look like this. The spines that you all imagine I'm kind of loving seeing every day, most of them aren't really looking like these fabulous things, because most of them are in boxes, because we've got a very powerful sprinkler system which would make them piss wet through. So we put them in the boxes and they collect them, they protect them. And what it means though is you can take a box of pamphlets, for example, off a shelf, and within it you get this microcosm of the library's collections, all of these fabulous pamphlets. That's what we're doing now, investigating library problems, literature, blah blah blah. A pamphlet about pamphlets, isn't it fantastic? So that's what most of the collections look like, and many of them don't even have spines really, they're just pamphlets. I should quickly clear up, in case anybody doesn't understand, I've done guided tours for an hour and a half, and towards the end somebody will say, "You don't get fiction though, do you?" And I'm like, that's a third of our entire collection that you've just written off. Why did you do that? I said we get everything. What is wrong with you? Yes, we get fiction. Mills and Boon, you know, fantastic, Pink Spines, Dead on Arrival, No Love in a Bullet, all of this kind of pulp fiction. I don't know how well read it is. It's there if you want to read it. What's Left of Fred, Shades of Grey. You know, why limit yourself to 50 shades of grey of all of the things to put a limit on? Nuts. A Requiem of Sharks, which it leaps out from the shelf, that fabulous silver bold spine. And I thought I must have a look at this. And I mean, for Margaret and Ken, two lovely people by the sea, can you, what kind of message is that to Margaret and Ken? Hi, I've written you a book called A Requiem of Sharks for two sea dwellers. What a weird thing. Fallen Angel by Lynn Viviers, a Star Trek fanzine. That's a publication. Look, it's stapled together. It's been put together in a possibly a domestic environment, but it was taken seriously. And I think this publisher actually, they put out loads and loads of these fanzines. And we did our very best to collect this kind of material. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. So I am getting to the end of our presentation. Oh my God, 5 minutes over already. So sorry.
Graeme, don't worry about time.
Yay, don't worry about the time, said a mystery voice. Whew, I so wasn't anyway. Our most important item, right? So people ask me this, you know, what's your most important item? It's like, well, you know, is it the Gutenberg Bible? Well, it's pretty important, you know, in terms of certain European culture. Yeah, it's absolutely dynamite. It was the first way of having a mechanical printing process, and a printing process. The head of Rare Books would be freaking out. 1455, you know, it's absolutely core to European culture as we know it. It's, yeah, dead important. Is it that? Is it the Mirthly Hours from the 1300s? Beautiful illuminated manuscript. Yeah, it's dead nice, possibly, yeah. Is it Mary Queen of Scots' last letter? Is that our most important thing? Loads of people love it. I'm not that fussed, if I'm honest. If you like last letters, you know, it's a good one. But yeah, it's in French anyway. It's all right if, you know, regicide. Maybe it's this. Maybe our most important item is this. It's this kind of stuff. I adore this kind of stuff, and I'm not pulling your tail. It's why would you do a short history of the Ballachulish slate quarry? Barbara Fairweather, why would you do that? There's no fame, fortune, there's no money in it. You do it because you love it. You absolutely, you commit to that project, and you get up in the drizzle, you go weekend after weekend, and you do your research for the sake of it. These have profound importance. They say something gigantic. Scotland's first karate club by Dr. Clive Layton. What a guy. Why bother? And yet, if you were to open that, you'd find it was full of stories, of details, of photographs, of facts. It's amazing. What is the motivation to do that? Ask yourself. Look at all the Crofters newsletter, the love that goes into creating local newsletters is absolutely mind-blowing. I dearly love this kind of content. The Scottish Junior Cup results, 1950 to 1960 by Stuart Davison. And it's, the guy's just put a plastic thing up it. It's a book, it's a collection, it's a publication. And our collections would be so much poorer without this kind of material. And we're very, very grateful to have it. These are, I think, our most important items, but I'll leave that with you. So the message is, and I should be finished in 5 minutes. I've only gone 50% over, never mind. The message is, if I only had one thing to say, and clearly I don't, that although people think, oh, the books are for people, you know, you get this mantra, books are for people. I think it's beyond that. I think that books are people. They are completely evidential of everything to do with human life. They wouldn't exist without people. You could find art without humans. You get art in nature. And museum pieces exist in the soil without humans. But text is totally a human function. The articulation of ideas and emotions through the written word is a stunning thing. And so the link between our collections and people is, it cannot be broken. So when I look at the library's collection, I don't see books really, I just see people. They're reeking with people. And there are some people that would like to burn libraries down, and sadly every so often it happens. Because what they're trying to do is, I suppose they're trying to wipe out people or particular types of people. There are, without doubt, dreadful moments in history, which aren't, they're not good moments. And clearly there is this, and also many people do live in this land. But I've got to tell you, the honest truth is that as I walk around the library's 120 miles of shelves, I can tell you without any doubt that the vast majority of what I see is evidence of this, of human competence. All of the other pales into absolute insignificance. When you look at all of our science collections, a third of our collections, that's human competence. There's nothing bad there. It's just brilliant. Works of the imagination, stunning. It's all competence. And there's so much more evidence of the art of practice and mending than there is of destruction, even though there's usually a book about Hitler on every shelf. Totally dwarfed, totally and utterly dwarfed by how much fantastic stuff happens as a consequence of human life. Somebody understands these books: fundamentals of photonics, principles of structural design, the Rishi flow. What the hell? There's a man that came into the library for about 2 years solid, and I asked him, because he was in all the time, said, what are you studying? He was reading these books: glycine neurotransmission, brain messengers, and the picture. He understands this shit. It's absolutely, absolutely incredible that we know what we know. Absolute genius. Renal dialysis. Even when things aren't going well, we still look at how impressive we are for getting our heads around this. And right now there's people doing just the same with the coronavirus. So impressive, so impressive. It makes you feel astonished. plant life, and so on. And so, you know, this person that wrote this book with these very jolly book spines, Radiation Curing in Polymer Science and Technology. They were a child once, and they had to attend children's parties and be asked banal questions. What would you like, jelly and ice cream? And all the time, this bloody knowledge about radiation curing, their life was building to the point that it took 4 volumes to get it out of the system. What a person. This is an amazing item. Look at it. Volume 1 and 2 of the Proceedings of the 5th International Symposium on Numerical Methods in Engineering. What on earth? People boarded flights to get to this place to have an international symposium, the 5th International Symposium. People went and booked hotels and bed and breakfasts to be together, to share this. Unbelievable. So the things that we build, cooling towers that stand there forever, and then you flick a switch and detonate them and they collapse like calamari. What is that? The things that we build, the things that children build. We're builders. It's absolutely amazing. So you get to this business and you hear people saying, oh, is there life on other planets? You know, Brian Cox, is there life on other, we need to find worlds beyond ours. You know, we can't be alone in the universe. And what they're looking for half the time is water. They're looking to find water somewhere else. I think, well, you know, you've got to kind of be aware that there are some people that can't even find it on this planet. What are we doing looking for it elsewhere? Let's fix this first. And they're looking for life-giving light on other planets. I think, wow, fine, try and find it. And when you do, you let me know if there are candles. Do candles exist anywhere else in the universe apart from here? I bet you any money I'd go up against Brian Cox. Do you think, Brian, that candles exist anywhere else? And you know what, if they do, if you find your candles, do you think on that same planet as the candles there would be ships in bottles? I mean, secrets of ships in bottles. So first we have ships, and then we have vitrification to make bottles, and then we put ships in the bottles, and those ships have secrets. Brian, do you think that? And even if that, do you think that ABBA would also exist on this same alternative planet? It's nonsense. We need to start calling this out. It's nonsense. I said earlier about real dogs, but they're not real. Dogs aren't real. We make them. These are all man-made breeds. The wolf is real, and everything else we've made because we're nuts. Because we're nuts about dogs, and we want, there's a cat there. I've just spotted for the first time there's a cat in amongst the dogs. We love dogs so much that we want more of them, and we make them. So this business of life on other planets, it does my head in. To me, it's just a lot of cosmic noise. And it leaves me thinking that even if they do exist, almost all aliens are probably just rubbish. And the reason why I've got a thing about this is because of this. This is a leaflet here, a pamphlet, as you might be familiar with, in 1980, to tell people that basically we could have a crack at nuclear war because, well, you could always build a shelter in your house and maybe you'd survive it. And I think, or maybe you could just not have a nuclear war. And that's how I feel about searching for life on other planets. Is maybe we should just enjoy this one. Maybe it doesn't matter whether there is another planet or not. I think that we're probably living in the best place we could. So that's my advice. How to be a space explorer is to enjoy this one and look after it a bit more, because it's full of the marvels of the universe, and our collections are full of them too. And this guy, the astonishing ant, I mean, it is an astonishing creature, and we share a planet with it, and it's fab. So I said it was a short story. Yeah, what time is it? It's gone on 20 minutes too long. I'm very sorry. And it's not a short story. It's clearly an endless story. We receive publications every day. And I said that it was about the joy of spines, and it is, but it's not about the joy of book spines. It's about us. This presentation has only ever really been about us. And tonight it's a clap for carers, and we are going to clap for carers, of course, but we should also just give a wee clap for ourselves. We're a fabulous species, and thank you for listening.